Every level of Porsche explained. Some Porsches are garage queens, some are investment pieces, and some are mistakes the company wishes it could erase. The Porsche 914. When Porsche partnered with Volkswagen in 1969, they created a mid-engine sports car that carried both badges depending on the market. Enthusiasts immediately rejected it. The 914 had a Volkswagen engine, a Targa top that felt flimsy, and a price point that attracted buyers who couldn't afford a real 911. It wasn't slow, but it wasn't special. Decades later, the 914 is still the Porsche that owners have to defend. It sits here because it represents compromise over purity. And in the world of Porsche, compromise is unforgivable. The Porsche 924. Introduced in 1976, the 924 was originally an Audi project. When Audi abandoned the design, Porsche bought it and slapped their badge on the hood. The problem was obvious. It used a front-mounted four-cylinder engine sourced from a Volkswagen van and a rear transaxle layout that felt unbalanced. Purists called it a parts bin special. The interior was basic, the performance underwhelming, and the styling, while clean, lacked the aggression expected from a Porsche. It sold well to people who wanted the badge, but collectors today ignore it. The 924 exists in this tier because it was built for accountants, not engineers. It prioritized sales over soul, and that decision haunts its legacy. The Porsche 912e. In 1976, Porsche resurrected the 912 for a single year to bridge the gap during the oil crisis. The 912e took a 911 body and dropped in a four-cylinder engine from the 914. It looked like a 911, but felt like a shadow of one. Buyers got the silhouette without the substance. The performance was adequate, but forgettable. Porsche built it purely as a stopgap, and it shows. Collectors view the 912e as the participation trophy of Porsche ownership. It sits here because it represents a missed opportunity to either build something bold or simply wait until the crisis passed. The Porsche Boxster 986. The first-generation Boxster arrived in 1996 as Porsche's attempt to save itself from bankruptcy. It was a mid-engine roadster that borrowed styling cues from the 911 but cost half the price. On paper, it made sense. In practice, enthusiasts saw it as a hairdresser's car. The 986 had a fatal flaw. Its M96 engine was prone to intermediate shaft bearing failure, a defect that could grenade the entire motor without warning. Owners lived in constant fear of catastrophic failure, and repair costs often exceeded the car's value. Beyond the mechanical issues, the Boxster carried a stigma. It was seen as the Porsche for people who couldn't afford a 911. The performance was respectable, the handling sharp, but the reputation never recovered. It sits in this tier because it was engineered well enough to be enjoyable, yet plagued by a design flaw that turned ownership into a gamble. The Porsche Cayenne first generation. When Porsche announced an SUV in 2002, purists revolted. The Cayenne was seen as a betrayal, a cash grab that diluted the brand's racing heritage. It shared a platform with the Volkswagen Touareg, reinforcing the belief that Porsche had sold out. Early models had questionable styling with awkward proportions and a front end that looked bloated. The interior felt cheap compared to competitors, and the driving dynamics, while capable, lacked the precision expected from Porsche. However, the Cayenne succeeded financially. It brought in revenue that funded the development of future sports cars. Critics hated it, but accountants loved it. The first-gen Cayenne belongs here because it saved the company while damaging its soul. It was necessary, but that doesn't make it respectable. The Porsche 928. The 928 was Porsche's attempt to replace the 911 in the late 1970s. It featured a front-mounted V8 engine, a luxury-focused interior, and styling that looked more Grand Tourer than sports car. Porsche believed the future belonged to comfort and refinement, not raw performance. They were wrong. The 928 never connected with enthusiasts. It was heavy, expensive to maintain, and lacked the visceral feel of a rear-engine layout. While it had power and presence, it failed to deliver the engagement that defined Porsche. Production ended in 1995 after the company realized the 911 was irreplaceable. The 928 sits here because it represents a failed vision. It was well built and innovative, but it solved a problem that didn't exist. The Porsche 944. The 944 arrived in 1982 as the refined evolution of the 924. Porsche fixed many of the earlier car's flaws by designing its own engine, a 2.5-liter inline-4 that was balanced and capable. The handling was sharp, the build quality improved, and the styling aged well. For a front-engine Porsche, the 944 did everything right. The problem was perception. Enthusiasts still saw it as a budget option, the car you bought when a 911 was out of reach. The 944 Turbo and later S2 models offered genuine performance, with some variants rivaling the 911 in straight-line speed. Yet the stigma remained. It was Porsche for people who settled. Today, the 944 has a cult following. Prices have risen as collectors recognize its engineering merit. It sits in this tier because it was competent, well-designed, and fun to drive, but it never escaped the shadow of the 911. The Porsche Cayenne 987. When the Cayenne launched in 2005, it was immediately clear Porsche had created something special. The mid-engine layout offered near-perfect weight distribution, and the handling was sharper than the Boxster it was based on. Reviews praised its balance and precision. Some journalists even suggested it drove better than the 911. That's when Porsche intervened. The company deliberately limited the Cayenne's power to ensure it never threatened 911 sales. The base model came with less horsepower than it could handle, and higher performance variants were withheld. Enthusiasts called it corporate sabotage. The Cayenne had the bones to be great, but Porsche refused to let it reach its full potential. It belongs here because it represents wasted opportunity, a car that could have been legendary, held back by internal politics. The Porsche Panamera, first generation. In 2009, Porsche launched a four-door sedan, and the reaction was brutal. The styling was awkward, with a hunchback roofline that looked like it had been designed by committee. Critics called it ugly, and even Porsche executives admitted the proportions were compromised by packaging constraints. The interior was cluttered with buttons, and early reliability issues plagued owners. However, the Panamera drove better than it looked. The handling was surprisingly agile for a large sedan, and the turbocharged variants offered serious performance. Over time, Porsche refined the design, and later generations fixed the styling issues. The first-gen Panamera sits here because it was a flawed but functional attempt to expand the brand. It succeeded financially but failed aesthetically, proving that even Porsche can miscalculate. The Porsche 911-996. The 996 generation, produced from 1998 to 2005, is the most controversial 911 ever made. Porsche replaced the iconic round headlights with fried egg-shaped units borrowed from the Boxster. Purists revolted. The design was seen as a cost-cutting measure that stripped the 911 of its identity. Beyond aesthetics, the 996 suffered from the same IMS bearing issue that plagued the Boxster, turning ownership into a ticking time bomb. Early models also had interior quality issues, with cheap plastics and switchgear that felt dated. However, the 996 introduced water cooling, which improved performance and reliability in theory. The Turbo and GT3 variants were genuinely excellent, offering performance that matched or exceeded previous generations. The 996 sits here because it was mechanically competent and offered strong performance. But the design choices and reliability concerns divided the community. It's the 911 that enthusiasts love to hate, yet values have started climbing as collectors recognize its place in history. The Porsche 718 Cayenne and Boxster. In 2016, Porsche made a decision that outraged the fan base. They replaced the naturally aspirated flat-6 engines in the Cayenne and Boxster with turbocharged flat-4 engines. The move was made for efficiency and emissions compliance, but enthusiasts felt betrayed. The new engines produced more power and torque, yet they lacked the soul of the six-cylinder. The sound was flat and uninspiring, often compared to a Subaru rather than a Porsche. Reviews praised the handling and performance, but criticized the character. The 718 was faster on paper, but less engaging emotionally. Porsche eventually reintroduced six-cylinder options in the GTS 4.0 models, acknowledging the backlash. The base 718 belongs here because it's objectively good, but subjectively disappointing. It proves that raw performance numbers don't always translate to driving pleasure. The Porsche Macan. The Macan launched in 2014 as Porsche's compact SUV, positioned below the Cayenne. Unlike its larger sibling, the Macan was met with less hostility. It shared a platform with the Audi Q5, but offered sharper handling and a more engaging driving experience. The interior quality was strong, the styling cleaner than the first-gen Cayenne, and the performance legitimate. Turbocharged variants could hit 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds, impressive for a vehicle of its size. The issue with the Macan is that it's competent but unremarkable. It's a well-executed crossover that happens to wear a Porsche badge. It doesn't inspire passion, it doesn't rewrite the rulebook, it simply exists as a profitable product that funds the development of more exciting vehicles. The Macan sits here because it's good at what it does, but what it does isn't particularly special. The Porsche 911 997. The 997 generation, produced from 2004 to 2012, is widely considered the last of the analog 911s. Porsche brought back the round headlights, correcting the styling misstep of the 996. The interior quality improved dramatically, with better materials and a more cohesive design. The 997 also featured the option of a manual transmission paired with hydraulic steering, a combination that became increasingly rare in modern sports cars. Enthusiasts appreciate the 997 because it bridges the gap between old-school driving feel and modern performance. The Turbo and GT3 variants are particularly celebrated for their capability and engagement. However, early 997s still suffered from IMS bearing issues, though later models address this problem. The 997 belongs here because it delivered on the promise of what a 911 should be. It was refined, fast, and engaging without being overly computerized. It represents the sweet spot for collectors who want modern reliability with classic driving dynamics. The Porsche Carrera GT. The Carrera GT arrived in 2004 as Porsche's supercar statement. It featured a 5.7-liter V10 engine derived from a failed Formula One project, producing 605 horsepower. The car was built with a carbon fiber monocoque, ceramic composite brakes, and a 6-speed manual transmission. No electronic aids, no traction control, just raw mechanical feedback. The Carrera GT demanded respect. It was difficult to drive at the limit, unforgiving of mistakes, and notorious for its snap oversteer. Paul Walker's death in a Carrera GT highlighted the car's dangerous nature when mishandled. Despite this, the Carrera GT is revered for its purity. It represents an era when supercars prioritized driver involvement over computer assistance. Values have skyrocketed, with examples selling for over $2 million. It sits here because it's an icon of analog engineering, a car that proved Porsche could compete with Ferrari and Lamborghini on their terms while staying true to its own philosophy. The Porsche 911 991.1. The first iteration of the 991 generation, produced from 2011 to 2016, marked Porsche's shift toward modernization. The car grew larger, gained electronic power steering, and introduced turbocharging across the entire lineup by the end of its run. The 991.1 was faster, more refined, and more comfortable than any 911 before it. Critics praised its performance, but some enthusiasts mourned the loss of hydraulic steering. The feedback was diluted, the connection to the road less immediate. The 991.1 GT3 and GT3 RS models remained naturally aspirated and offered sharper driving experiences, but the base models felt sanitized. The 991.1 belongs here because it's objectively excellent, yet subjectively compromised. It delivers performance that previous generations couldn't match, but it does so at the cost of the rawness that defined early 911s. It's a car built for perfection, not passion. The Porsche 959. The 959, produced from 1986 to 1993, was Porsche's technological masterpiece. It debuted as the world's fastest street-legal production car, capable of reaching 197 miles per hour. The 959 featured all-wheel drive, adjustable ride height, twin turbocharged flat-six engine, and a 6-speed manual transmission. These innovations were unheard of in the 1980s. Porsche developed the 959 to dominate Group B rally racing, but the program was canceled before it could prove itself. The car became a homologation special, with only 337 units produced. Its advanced technology influenced future Porsche models, particularly the 911 Turbo's all-wheel drive system. The 959 was so advanced that it couldn't be legally imported into the United States for years due to emissions and crash testing regulations. Bill Gates famously waited over a decade to register his. Values today exceed $3 million. The 959 sits here because it was a bold engineering statement that pushed boundaries, but its limited production and homologation origins keep it from the absolute top tier. It was built to prove a point, and it succeeded. The Porsche 911 GT3 RS 991.2. The GT3 RS arrived in 2017 as the most powerful production 911 ever made. Its twin turbocharged 3.8-liter flat-six produced 700 horsepower, sending power exclusively to the rear wheels. No all-wheel drive, no stability control safety net, just raw, unfiltered aggression. Porsche set a Nürburgring lap record with it, completing the circuit in 6 minutes and 47 seconds. The GT3 RS was built for drivers who wanted maximum performance without compromise. The interior was stripped down, the aerodynamics aggressive, and the driving experience visceral. It represented Porsche's willingness to build a car that terrified as much as it thrilled. Production was limited, and examples sold out immediately. The GT3 RS belongs here because it embodies Porsche's philosophy at its most extreme. It's a car that demands skill, punishes mistakes, and rewards precision. It's not the most iconic 911, but it's one of the most capable. The Porsche 918 Spyder. The 918 Spyder, produced from 2013 to 2015, was Porsche's hybrid hypercar. It combined a 4.6-liter V8 with 2 electric motors, producing a combined 887 horsepower. The result was a car that could lap Nürburgring in under 7 minutes while achieving fuel economy better than a Prius in electric mode. Only 918 units were built, each priced at nearly $1 million. The 918 proved that hybrid technology could enhance performance rather than compromise it. The car's torque vectoring, active aerodynamics, and advanced all-wheel drive system made it one of the most technologically sophisticated vehicles ever produced. The 918 sits here because it represents Porsche's vision for the future. It wasn't just fast, it was intelligent, efficient, and forward-thinking. It bridged the gap between combustion and electrification, proving that Porsche could innovate without abandoning its performance heritage. The Porsche 911 GT3 RS 992. The latest GT3 RS represents the culmination of decades of racing engineering applied to a street car. Its 4.0-liter naturally aspirated flat-six produces 518 horsepower and revs to 9,000 RPM. The sound is visceral, mechanical, and unmistakably Porsche. The aerodynamics are extreme, with a massive rear wing, front dive planes, and active elements that adjust based on speed and driving mode. Porsche incorporated DRS, drag reduction system, borrowed directly from Formula One. The GT3 RS set a Nürburgring lap time of 6 minutes 49 seconds, faster than many million-dollar hypercars. What elevates this car is its accessibility. Unlike the Carrera GT or GT2 RS, the GT3 RS is manageable. Advanced electronics assist the driver without removing engagement. It's a car that flatters skill levels while rewarding precision. The GT3 RS belongs here because it represents Porsche's purest vision, a naturally aspirated rear-wheel drive machine built for one purpose: driver connection. It's the benchmark against which all other drivers' cars are measured. The Porsche 911 GT1. The GT1 was never meant to be a production car. Built in 1996 to meet homologation requirements for GT1 racing, Porsche created a mid-engine race car, wrapped it in bodywork that vaguely resembled a 911, and called it road legal. Only 25 street versions were produced. The GT1 featured a twin turbocharged flat-six mounted behind the driver, producing over 540 horsepower in street trim and significantly more in race spec. It won Le Mans in 1998, cementing its legacy as one of the most successful racing Porsches ever built. The street version was barely drivable, with a clutch so heavy it required leg strength to operate, and visibility so poor that parking was nearly impossible. The GT1 sits at the top because it represents Porsche's willingness to do whatever it takes to win. It bent the rules, exploited loopholes, and dominated. It wasn't built for comfort or practicality. It was built for victory, and it delivered. The Porsche 917. The 917 is the most important race car Porsche ever built. Introduced in 1969, it was designed to dominate endurance racing, and it did. The 917 won Le Mans in 1970 and 1971, ending a two-decade drought for Porsche. Its flat 12 engine produced over 600 horsepower initially, and later versions pushed beyond 1,000 horsepower in turbocharged Cayenne configuration. The 917 was notoriously difficult to drive, with aerodynamic instability that made it dangerous at high speeds. Early versions were nearly undrivable on long straights, with drivers reporting that the car felt like it would take flight. Porsche refined the design, developing the long tail and Kurtek variants that improved stability. The 917 immortalized Porsche in motorsport history and inspired the iconic Gulf oil livery scene in the film Le Mans. It belongs here because it defined an era of racing and proved that Porsche could engineer dominance when given the freedom to push boundaries without restriction. If you thought this breakdown of Porsche's hierarchy was detailed, wait until you see what's on the screen next. Go check it out now.